Let's talk about this really disturbing news regarding Anthony Smith, the former UFC light heavyweight, the former UFC title challenger, arrested on felony charges for domestic violence, terroristic threats, and false imprisonment, and could face up to 20 years in prison time. I'll go over kind of the quick summary of this. I think most of you already have seen the news and have seen what has happened here. It says Anthony Smith has been arrested in Nebraska and faces multiple felony charges following an initial report by TMZ Sports. Damon Martin confirmed with courts that Smith was arrested on Monday evening at 8:44 p.m. and remains in custody at Sarpy County Jail. This is in Nebraska. Smith's arrest record indicates he has felony charges for terroristic threats, false imprisonment, which means you're keeping your spouse in your house and not letting her leave, attempted first-degree domestic assault. Details of the arrest and circumstances that led to it are not available. In Nebraska, domestic violence causing seriously bodily injury is a Class 2 felony, carrying it with a maximum of 50 years imprisonment. Terroristic threats and false imprisonments in the first-degree charges are Class A3 felonies, carrying a maximum of 3 years imprisonment plus 18 months. Post-release supervision is up to a $10,000 fine. Yeah, not good. And, Smith was a guy that you could just see, the way his career sort of ended in the UFC. Losing 4 of his last 5, had that one win in between there with Petrino, but a couple knockout losses, which got a bit concerning. And this is a guy, too, that had taken a ton of damage. Look at this, 12 knockout losses in his career. That's not good, health-wise. And, we've seen it time and time again when it comes to other athletes and other sports with CTE and, causing changes in brain activity and behavior and all that. And, I've interviewed Anthony Smith a handful of times. I've been around him in person. He's always been a really nice guy, but you do wonder if CTE did play into this. And I do wonder if this is kind of starting a, sort of a disturbing trend going forward with retired fighters. We obviously saw all the news with Dustin Poirier getting arrested, and obviously Dustin Poirier and Anthony Smith's situation is totally different. Not trying to say they're the same thing, but it is a case again of a fighter struggling with retirement. Smith's been retired for a little bit here, although saying that he did have this bare knuckle fight back in April, which a lot of us, you guys let me know in the comments, but a lot of us saw this and said, this isn't a good idea. This is a guy coming off 2 knockout losses, and now he's going to fight in bare knuckle. You have an analyst job, you have other opportunities, and we'll talk about those opportunities in a second here, because this is a guy that had a lot going on, and he's still getting in trouble. Dana White came out after the Dustin Poirier arrest and said something about, we take care of our athletes beyond retirement, but he was very casual about it. And I don't know what type of program the UFC has in place, but I do wonder if we're going to start hearing more stories about retired fighters, whether it's CTE issues, whether it's fighters in Poirier's case, just, making bad decisions, drinking because they're not, fully stimulated. I know for a lot of fighters, they do struggle with retirement. A lot of athletes do, not just MMA, but you see it in other sports where athletes need to find a new outlet because, you think about it, you're so immensely immersed in a career where, you're doing things at a very intense high level, training all the time, getting ready for fights, all that. And then all of a sudden that's taken away. It's like you're trying to get your body to sort of adjust and your mind to adjust about living new life. So I understand that side of things, but a couple of things on the Smith thing. Fight Society, go check out his video. He did a really good in-depth thing here about the police calls and all that sort of goes in a little bit more on this. So by all means, go check out Fight Society. One of the guys I think does really great work in this industry. You can go check out those videos. You want to know more about the actual arrest. I think, from my point of view and not knowing too much about this, I'm not going to dig too much in the arrest itself. But what I can tell you from my perspective as someone who's interviewed Anthony over the years is Anthony has had a bad habit of not sticking with one thing. So he's had, I don't know if you guys know, he's been involved in a bunch of different media things over the years. So obviously he does the desk work. Remember he had the podcast with Bisping, and then all of a sudden he kind of abruptly left and was replaced by Paul Felder. Smith, and I can tell you just from booking interviews with him, he's a little flaky. And I wonder if some of that has limited some of the opportunities he's had outside the cage. Remember, he had a podcast on paper with Anthony Smith that was going strong for a while, and he was getting some good guests. The last episode it looks like they did was in November with Yanni and Jacek. He was getting like Yusuf Salalan, Drew Dober, and he had a lot of connections because not only from him just being a fighter, but also because he's with Vayner Sports. Like here's the convo with Johnny Walker from August of last year. So it seemed like he was one of the fighters that had found a good outlet going forward in terms of, having a podcast or something where he could make some extra money. Obviously it's not his full-time job, but it did seem like he had a lot of other opportunities, but that show didn't last. Like I said, the last episode that we see here with Yanni and Jacek, It was back in November, and now the show, you can't even find it. The YouTube channel's down. So yeah, it's just unfortunate. And I wonder if part of that played into it too, where Smith again just doesn't have a ton going on, and maybe there's, you know, other things going on as far as how he's using his time. I do wonder that. Again, I'm not saying this to defend him. I think, you know, what he's done is horrific, assuming he is guilty of these charges. Again, innocent until proven guilty. Watching Fight Society's video, though, it looks, you know, pretty not so great. But yeah, I just wonder, like, if Smith maybe lost some opportunities outside the cage. Maybe, again, the fact that he was fighting bare knuckle so soon after he actually, yeah, I even forgot. Yeah, so he fought a year later in bare knuckle. So it was April 2025 is when he retired, and then he fought bare knuckle earlier this year. Like that, when I saw him take that fight, my first thought is, okay, you need money, right? And I don't think I'm alone on that, where people thought that and thought this isn't very good. And I think this is where people have to step in and say, no, you shouldn't be fighting anymore. Again, 12 knockout losses in his career. This is pretty, I mean, he had a really long career in MMA, 37-22 record. That is almost double or triple what the average, you know, span of a fighter's career is. And with that, you got to imagine there's going to be some, you know, post-career health issues here. 12 knockout losses. I think we can't glaze over that at all. With that, I'm sure there's some CTE involved in some of the behavior that you're seeing with Anthony Smith here. So, yeah, again, I titled this video Disturbing Trend because I think we may see more and more fighters post UFC or post MMA in general run into some problems. And listen, fighters have been arrested before. We've seen a lot of fighters have health issues, but I just wonder, is this going to be more of a focus, and is the UFC going to step up and do more about it? I just wonder that, because again, Dana's response to the whole Poirier thing was, oh, we take care of fighters after that, but not really giving any clarity on it. Is there a treatment center that they go to? Is there, you know, what type of resources are there? I just wonder about this. And I understand at the end of the day, listen, these fighters sign up, they know how dangerous the sport is. They know the long-term health risks of this. But I just wonder, like, this can't look good on anyone with Anthony Smith doing this. And again, Smith is still kind of a UFC employee in the sense that he's still an analyst. You got to imagine that gig's gone. So this happens, and, you know, let's say even if he's innocent or whatever, you know, I don't think he's going to have a job after this. And then it's like, what are you going to do for your career? He had a lot of good opportunities here on an analyst side of things. And I feel like he did an interview with Submission Radio not that long ago. So I don't think it's like he's been spiraling at a certain point. Let me just have a look here. I feel like he was on Submission Radio not that long ago. I might not be able to find it. That's 2024, 2018. Yeah, let me just have a quick look here on Submission Radio's channel. I feel like he was on recently. Like, I have seen him do some media, so it's not like he's been out of the limelight for that long. Yeah, he was on for the UFC 329 preview 3 weeks ago. So I was right about that. So, and I remember watching that and thinking, okay, well, seems like he's doing all right. But yeah, I just wonder, like, the future of some of these fighters with, you know, dealing with, it's a multiple, you know, kind of thing that fighters can be dealing with. It's, what am I going to do in retirement? How's my health? Is my brain right? Is that something that's okay? And then also just, you know, again, like, how fighters are going to handle things beyond retirement, I think, is sort of a big question here. So yeah, again, I know a lot of people have kind of gone in depth on the Anthony Smith stuff. Like I said, go check out Fight Society. He's done a really great job with that. I just wonder, is this going to be more of a thing we're going to see here going forward? And I hope it isn't. I really hope it isn't. I'm just saying it's something that we're now noticing. Here's another fighter who seems to have struggled with retirement, getting in trouble in this spot here. So yeah, wish all the best for everyone involved. No one likes to see this, especially with a guy like Anthony Smith. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the whole matter. So let me know your thoughts in the comments about Anthony Smith. What was your reaction to seeing this? Do you think the CTE is playing a role in this? Do you think the fact that Smith, again, has had some problems maintaining, like, a, you know, media career after this? Again, he's getting the analyst work, but, and I forgot to mention too, he had a gig with SiriusXM before they switched over to wrestling. Like, he's had a lot of opportunities, but they just haven't been long-term opportunities. I've seen Smith go from show to show, and I just wonder too, is that part of his struggle as to why he's dealing and maybe acting this way? I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but we're all trying to figure out the pieces to the puzzle to why this happened. So follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.